Now then YouTube, welcome back to the conversion of Stan the camper van, our VW Crafter. What I want to talk to you about today is an issue with fitting heated seats to the van. So I've got some rather nice leather seats made by Captain Seat Limited at Melton Mowbray, and they're swivel captain seats, and I asked them to come with seat heaters in. One of the issues though is that the cable for the switch is really short. So having fitted the first of the seats, which you can see me sitting on, the switches are obviously designed either to go in a center console or maybe into this area here on the edge of the seat. The issue is though that because these are swivel seats, as you spin the seat round, there's a danger of the seat switch cable getting caught in the seat mechanism. So what I've decided to do is to extend the cables and to fit the switches to the dashboard, and I'm going to talk you through how to do that today. So the first thing we need to do is to strip out the dashboard. As you can see now, this is fairly simple to do. It's all T20 Torx, and if you're just careful and you make sure that you don't force anything, just make sure that everything's unscrewed before you unclip the plastic. It all comes out fairly easily. And I've gone to the extent of removing the AC so that I can get in easily to feed the cables up and down. And I've already put the cables in, and I'm using this 7-core cable that I had from a previous job with my Land Rover Defender. Obviously there are only 4 cores in the switch cable, and so what I'll have to do is make some of the cables redundant. Also, they're not exactly the same colours, but as long as you use the same colour at each end, you'll be fine. So there's a red and a black in the 7-core cable to match the red and black in the switch cable, and there's also a yellow and a blue, so that will match the 2 twin colours in the switch cable. So the first thing we need to do then is decide where the switches are going to go, and to drill a 20mm hole so that the switch will fit. And make sure that when you do this, you get the right place first time, because there's no going back once you've got this 20mm hole in your dashboard. Okay, and you can drill through the plastic behind as well to make sure that you've got plenty of room to feed the cable through. So there we've got the 20mm hole right through the dashboard. Okay, and you'll be able to see that the switch will fit nicely into that hole. So the next thing we need to do is to strip the cables. Okay, so I've stripped a good lump of the cable to work with, and then as I say, I need 4 of these cables, so 3 of them are going to be redundant. So the 3 I'm not using out of this 7-core are the brown, the white and the green. So I just simply snip those off like that. And then, just to tidy things up, a little bit of heat shrink over the top. Get the heat gun. Just to keep that nice and tidy. Next thing is to fit the switch into the hole that we've drilled. So there's your hole in the dash. Pop the switch through. Get it the right way up. and you'll see that the switch fits quite nicely into that 20mm hole. It just pops in. Okay, so then bring the cable round, and what we're going to have to do is cut this plug off at the end. So again, leaving yourself plenty of cable to work with, we cut about 6 inches off the end of the cable. With some cutters like that. Okay, set the switch, set the plug to one side, put it somewhere where you're not going to lose it, and then remove some of this cable sheathing to give us plenty of room to work. So you can just run a craft knife up there to score it, and then remove one of the cables, you see. Then, having removed the outer sheathing, we've just put a bit of heat shrink again on there to tidy that up and keep it nice and neat. So the next thing to do is to strip the ends of the cable on both the cable from the switch, which is this one, and then the cable that we've run into position, which is this one. And so I've just noticed that this cable's got a bit damaged, so I'm just going to shorten these a little bit to get past the damage. Like that. And then we'll just strip the ends. And then what I'm going to do now is just slide some heat shrink onto these for after I've finished, just so that we can just keep it nice and neat. So some heat shrink on this end, like that. That's as far as it will go. And then do the same on the other end. Okay. And then the way I'm going to actually join these cables together is that I'm going to use these little cable joiners. So they're from a company called Eventronic, and what you've got in there is it's a bit of heat shrink, it's got some solder in the middle, and then some adhesive. The red band at each end is adhesive. So choose the colour of the cable that you're going to start with, and in this case we'll start with the blue. Slide it in one end, make sure that the cut cable goes in where the band of solder is, and we're going to match that up with the blue and red from the switch cable, and we slide that into the other end, you see, like so. There we go. Okay, and then once that's in, what you can do is you can just get something to just crush that little bit of solder to hold the cables in place. which sometimes helps. And then we simply get the heat gun, and we use the heat gun to warm these up. Okay, and what you need to do is make sure you keep the heat on until you see the solder melt in the middle. Now don't be tempted now to check this and see if they're joined or not, because if you try and pull this apart while the solder's still soft, it will just pull out. Okay, and you obviously want to avoid that happening. So then you just let it go cold. Now what you can do, if you wanted, you could put some heat shrink or some tape over that, which is why I've got this heat shrink at each end. And you do that for each of the 4 cables, obviously joining the correct colours together. Okay, so here we are at a stage where we've got all 4 of the cables joined together using those little solder connections. So we simply group those together, slide the heat shrink down from each end. So you can see I've graduated the size of the heat shrink here to give me a nice tidy finish. If I can get this blue stuff to slide down, which maybe I can't. There we go. So again, having got all that into position, we simply apply the heat gun to the heat shrink to make it melt. And of course, one thing you must be really careful of is that you don't point the heat gun at any of the electronics and stuff that you've got hanging out the dashboard. And so there we've got one end made. Okay, so what we simply need to do now is to go on and fit the plug to the other end of the cable. So the 7-core cable has been trimmed to a 4-core, and I've put some heat shrink on there just like before, ready for when we finished, and I've stripped the ends ready to go. So that's the 4 ends ready to go, remembering that you need to make sure you use the same colours as you did at the top end. This cable is run down through the dash and out the bottom, ready to go, because it's probably easier to do that when it's just a cable rather than when it's got the plug on the end. And then I've done exactly the same with the plug. Okay, so I've stripped the 4 cables. So what we're going to do now is go on with 4 of those little butt connectors again. We'll start with the black this time. So the 2 black cables together. Little red butt connector. These come in a pack of assorted sizes, so you can get sizes to suit the cable that you're using. Let's get the 2 blacks, one in each end. Okay, get the heat gun. And again, we've applied enough heat to melt the solder. Just hold it in place until it cools down. And then we've got a nice joint. So again, carry on and do the same with all 4 cables. Okay, so then we've got the plug joined back on. You can see that actually my bit of heat shrink got a bit warm in the process and has actually stuck in there. So what I'm going to do is these little bits of cable that I've got left exposed, we'll just wrap them in some insulating tape just to give them a bit of protection, because that's the bit that's going to be pushed into the seat box at the end. So then we have the cable nicely extended. All that remains to be done now then is to connect the plug at the seat end, put the ignition on and switch the seats on, see if it works. Okay, so all we need to do now is just to get the plug, which has got a bit squashed, and connect the plug like so, and then that can be pushed into the bottom of the seat box. The cable can be laid along the floor here, ready to go. Okay,